The following contains spoilers for Final Fantasy XIII. Please check the description for more info. Final Fantasy XIII, Episode 0, Promise. Part 3, Treasure. Chapter 1. Who would have thought it'd turn out to be such a big deal? Soldiers everywhere. Everything's messed up. When I first met you, it was so peaceful. Let's see now. That was 8 days ago, wasn't it? Yeah, just 8 days. In that time, all this has happened. I don't even know what's going on anymore. Just can't believe it. Dad has completely given up. Well, you have too. Daddy, I want that one! Dodge was tugging at his hand, and Sazh stopped without even thinking about it. When children demand things from their parents, they'll pull and tug and run around until they get what they want. His son Dodge was only 6, but he could pull an adult like Sazh over without even trying. Hey, why don't we buy it on the way back? Sazh had brought Dodge to Uriday Gorge. He couldn't remember when it was, but Dodge had said he wanted to see a fal'Cie. If he wanted to see a fal'Cie on Cocoon, the only place to go was to Uriday, to see fal'Cie Kujata. Sazh had searched around and he had found a free spot on what looked like the perfect tour package. A family vacation, visit Uriday and Bodhum, had been the tour name. The airship and hotel room would be reserved for you, and they'd give you some free time to explore the places yourself. The price for children had a nice discount, and it looked like fun. That's why they were now headed from Uriday Station to the energy plant. The place was filled with tourists, and every corner had a souvenir shop. Sazh had known that Dodge would want to stop somewhere. He'd want some animal-shaped balloon, or perhaps brightly colored candy would catch his eye. No, now! Dodge pulled on his hand even harder. All children are like this, saying what they want when they want it. Sazh remembered doing it too, and how happy he'd be when he'd gotten what he wanted. There was something he hadn't realized as a child. The adults who gave them what they wanted were even happier to do it. Alright, just this once. Just saying that made him start to smile. So what is it you want? They were in front of a pet shop. This wasn't just some local shop, but a chain that had shops everywhere. I want the yellow one! Let's see, which one is it? There were lots of different cages lined up in front of the shop. Just to show how big the shop was, they didn't have only your normal dogs and cats, but they also had monsters that had their genes rearranged to be non-threatening. The yellow one. Which yellow one? His eyes stopped. You don't mean that one. In one of the huge cages there was a big yellow flan, just sitting there. The flan was stretching out its body, trying to look menacing. Hey kid, you mean this yellow one, don't you? The shopkeeper smiled at Dodge and flapped his hands. Yeah, that one! Dodge nodded and made the same motion. It looked like they were imitating a bird. All kids mean this when they say, the yellow one, the shopkeeper said, pointing at a sign that said, Baby Chocobos in stock. Oh, just a chocobo. He had panicked when he thought Dodge had meant the flan, but he had no problems with a baby chocobo. Alright then, we'll take one of the yellow ones. Dodge's face lit up when he heard the words. Dodge loved chocobos. His favorite picture book was about a chocobo. He even had a chocobo print towel he'd used until it was in shreds. Great, then please come inside the shop. The shopkeeper tried to take Dodge by the hand. No, I'll wait here, Dodge said. He was proud that he was now old enough to wait on his own when his father had to do something. Now he wanted to wait by himself all the time. Alright, but you can't move from this spot. Got it? Dodge nodded, getting a mischievous look on his face. Of course Sazh knew what he was planning, which is why he always told him to not move. Recently, Dodge wasn't satisfied with just waiting by himself, so he'd play a game. He'd wait until Sazh had entered a store, then hide himself in the shadows. When Sazh came looking for him, he'd wait, all excited, until he was found. When he entered the shopkeeper was just opening up the cage. That's when one of the chocobos dashed from the cage and flew straight at Sazh. Hey, it looks like he likes you. He smiled and closed the cage when he saw the baby chocobo flying around Sazh. Does it? Can't really tell. His eyes met the baby chocobos when he looked up. The chocobo cocked his head. Just when he started thinking it was cute, its eyes flashed. The next moment, the chocobo dove at Sazh. Ow! The chocobo who landed right on top of Saz's head. Hey, don't use your claws like that! The chocobo chirped in answer. Sazh couldn't tell whether it was saying, okay, or do you think I care? But either way, it seemed happy. Once he'd finished paying, he left the shop in a hurry, with the chocobo riding on top of his head. He wanted to show Dodge the chocobo as soon as he could. Or so he'd thought, but Dodge was nowhere to be found. Well, this is how it always was. Hey Dodge, are you playing hide and seek? He acted as if he were looking around. Of course he was just hiding somewhere in the shadows. Soon he'd hear Dodge laughing from somewhere nearby. Small children don't hide so they couldn't be found. They hide so that they'll get picked up in a big hug. "Hey, looks like I lost. I can't find you," he said, pretending to give up. But he still didn't hear Dodge laugh. "Dodge?" He looked around. On the other side of the bench, in the cart's shadow, behind the flower box. But Dodge was nowhere to be seen. But maybe the energy plant was just over there. "You didn't go in there, did you?" Sazh ran to the entrance of the plant. Children will do the same things over and over and never get tired of them. But then suddenly one day they'll do something new. Children are good at this. That's how they grow up. I'm really letting him wait on his own for a while, Sazh thought. Dodge probably thought it would be fun to try going somewhere else on his own while he was waiting. When he was in front of the entrance, he looked back at the plaza once more just in case. There were lots of children his age, but he couldn't see Dodge. He really must have gone into the plant alone. Sazh started getting worried. That's when it happened. The ground trembled as though something huge had fallen. From far away he could hear the sound of air blowing. The children playing in the plaza all started crying and screaming. "Dodge!" Sazh ran towards the entrance. Something bad had just happened. He was certain. "Dodge, where are you?" Emergency sirens sounded. A loud noise cut through the screams. Tourists were rushing towards the entrance as fast as they could. Sazh wanted to get on with searching for Dodge, but the wave of people pushed and shoved him. He was unable to move an inch. He pushed through, trying to make his way through the crowd. They yelled at him and complained, but he had no time for that now. It took a while, but he finally heard the energy plant staff telling the tourists to calm down and exit in an orderly manner. It had probably taken them so long because they had been surprised as well. He could still hear and feel the ground trembling. White smoke was billowing out, and he couldn't tell what was happening inside. Was there a fire? Or an explosion? "Dodge! Where are you, Dodge?" Sazh accidentally breathed in the smoke, but it didn't make him cough. It wasn't smoke, but some kind of mist. It wasn't smoke, but some sort of mist. Just what was happening in there? There weren't many people along the walkway. Everyone else had probably already run. Maybe Dodge had been taken with them? No, that didn't seem right. He felt as though Dodge was somewhere close by. "Dodge! It's Dad! Please answer me!" He was right in front of Falsi Kujata. He yelled louder. The white mist had become even thicker than it was before, and he could hear a loud sound, like air escaping. He continued on, being careful to check everywhere around him. Then he saw the familiar color of Dodge's clothes. "Dodge!" Dodge was laid out along one of the resting benches. He ran over and gathered him up in his arms. "Daddy?" "It's all right. Everything is all right. Are you hurt?" He spoke in a calm voice to reassure him, checking his arms and legs. "Huh? What's this?" There was a strange mark he'd never seen on the back of Dodge's hand. At first he thought it was a sticker, but it was something else. It looked like the body paint some of those kids like to put on. Even so, how could he have? No, there would be time to think about it later. Right now they had to leave, get somewhere safe. He picked up Dodge to carry him when he heard the sound of footsteps closing in behind him. "Hey, are you all right?" It was a soldier on the security force. He'd be able to lead them to a safer place. "My child, is he hurt? Did he hit his head?" "I don't know. We got separated and then..." It probably said in the emergency procedure manual not to listen to the whole story. They unfolded a stretcher and placed Dodge on it. A female soldier stood close, looking into Dodge's face. "You don't have to be scared. Everything will be all right." She was probably checking to see whether he was conscious or not while she talked. She walked over to the soldiers and nodded. "Take him to the first aid room. Please come this way, sir." "We're saved," Sazh thought. "Everything will be all right." He nodded and walked after them. The first aid room was crowded with tourists who had hurt themselves while running away, or were otherwise not feeling well. When Dodge was on the stretcher, he had remained quiet, but now he was laying in bed. He couldn't take it anymore. Dodge began moving about, unable to keep still. He looked up at Sazh. "Hey, Daddy." "Shh," he said, laying a hand on Dodge's shoulder. "You have to stay quiet until the doctor can have a look at you." "Okay." Dodge nodded sadly. There was some commotion out in the hallway. Did they just bring in an emergency patient? The door to the first aid room burst open and several soldiers marched in. You could tell they weren't from the security force here, not just by their clothes, but by their cold demeanor. "We are now in a state of emergency. As of now, the plant and the surrounding area of Uriday are under PSICOM supervision. You will obey any orders given." A young woman was standing at the front of the soldiers. She wore her beauty and intelligence like a cloak. But perhaps it was the glasses. Her gaze seemed cold and severe. "Currently all airships landing at Uriday Station will be suspended. We will be setting up a tent in the plaza in front of the energy plant for you to use as a waiting area. So we would like everyone who has been but seen by a doctor to go there. Anyone who has not been seen and medical staff will go to the first aid tent. As of now, this place is off limits." The first aid room grew noisy, but only for a moment. Then, on the woman's orders, the soldiers separated the people into groups and made them form a line, leading them outside. That was neatly done, Sazh thought. PSICOM has always been good at this sort of thing. Sazh and Dodge went to the end of the line going to the first aid tent, but then he felt a hand on his shoulder. Is this the child who collapsed in front of the foul sea? It was the woman in the glasses who led the soldiers. She lowered her voice as she spoke to Sazh. My name is Jun Eishima of PSICOM. I wish to speak with you about your son. Please come with me. About my son? She lifted a finger to her lips, indicating to him to be quiet. I know you'd like to speak of it now, but please follow my orders. I'll explain in more detail, but here, there are too many people. Her words held a hidden meaning. Just what was happening? What had happened to Dodge? There were so many questions he wanted to ask, but this was PSICOM. This was someone who held a high position. The only thing Sazh could do was nod. Chapter 2. They pretended we were emergency patients, carrying us away and loading us on a PSICOM airship. Sometimes one of the higher-ups in PSICOM would come by, saying they had to observe us. That Nabat woman kept saying it was a lucky accident or something like that. PSICOM's specialty is, well, they call them the Menace of Pulse. I wondered what was so lucky about PSICOM being at the plant. No, I didn't care about that so long as Dodge was alright, so long as he was safe. But they didn't explain anything to me. They just dragged us to Eden and put us in the military's medical facility. She said she'd tell us the details later, but with the medical staff watching over us on the airship, there was no time for that. Because they said, the safety of your son is of the utmost importance. I didn't say anything. Dad was all shook up, so I completely forgot to let you and Dodge meet. But you weren't exactly able to at the time, were you? You were hiding in Dad's hair, so shocked you couldn't even move, right? When you finally flew out, it was night, and I was getting into bed. They'd put me in a different room from Dodge. I was all alone, so it gave me quite a start. I couldn't stop thinking about the word that Lieutenant Colonel Nabat said. The brand of the Lassie. By the next day, nothing had changed. Sazh still didn't know what was going on. He cornered one of the medical staff, but they'd only tell him that they were still investigating. Or they'd tell him that Colonel Nabat would explain everything to him at a later time. If he asked where she was, they'd only tell him they didn't know. He thought that they were probably hiding something, but it seemed the staff here really had no idea. They weren't in charge of the investigation on Dodge. Maybe they felt sorry for Sazh, who was out of his mind with worry. The medical staff attempted to find out about Colonel Nabat, but couldn't get much farther than he could. The colonel was out on duty, so she couldn't even be contacted. Lieutenant Colonel Nabat is a very important person. She is one who the Sanctum relies on heavily. There's nothing we can do. The young woman who'd done everything she could to help him looked regret. Lieutenant Colonel Nabat is a very important person. She is one who the Sanctum relies on heavily. There's nothing we can do. The young woman who'd done everything she could to help him looked regretful. According to her, Nabat had graduated at the top of her class. After that, she had moved quickly to the position of lieutenant colonel, and it wouldn't be too long before she attained even higher positions. If someone like that was involved, then what had happened at Uriday was no simple accident. It looked like he and Dodge were wrapped up in some serious business. That he was sure of. We will get in contact with her so you can get an explanation as soon as possible. I know you're worried, but please wait a little longer. I understand. Just as soon as you can, please. Sazh thanked her and returned to his room. It wasn't a sick room, but a place set aside for the family of patients. It was set up like a hotel. It even had a machine where you could access the shops, among other things. When he stopped in front of the machine, the baby chocobo flew out from his hair. It had probably been watching to see if it was safe, so it hadn't come out before. Play around as much as you want. I'm going to try and get some information. He turned on the machine and accessed the library. He wanted to find out more about this brand of the Lassie that Nabat had been talking about earlier. Of course he'd heard of Lassie. It was something he had known about since he was a child. Everyone born on Cocoon heard about them in old stories and fairy tales. But how does that fairy tale relate to reality? He couldn't think of any way they could have anything to do with Dodge and the accident at Uriday. He'd probably heard wrong, and it was actually a different word. Not really Lassie. If that was the case, then what could it be? He wanted to know what Nabat had been trying to say. He figured that his search would only come up with the titles of children's books, but he was wrong. There were more history books listed than he would have imagined. There were copies of old texts and videos from reference libraries as well. Sazh was trying to think of which one he should try first, when the baby chocobo came flying down the control panel. The screen changed. Hey now, don't touch the machine. If you're going to play around, go over there. He reached for the cancel button, but he looked closer at what had come up on the screen. It was a picture of an old text, strange symbols, and writing carved into rock. What in the world is this? He recognized that symbol. In fact, he had just seen it half a day before. It was the mark he had seen on the back of Dodge's hand. Sazh read the accompanying text that went with the picture, and he paled. The brand of the lassie that Nabat had been talking about wasn't just something he had misheard. Chapter 3. I've never really understood the phrase, everything went black, until now. But it's true. Not really black, but just not being able to see anything at all. No matter what you were looking at, it just won't register. I remember accessing the information from the University Research Group, or some think tank like... I remember accessing the information from some university research group, or some think tank or something like that. But I don't remember what it said. I remember reading it, that I'm sure of. I think it said something about the lassie of the sanctum or something like that. But none of it was information I wanted to know, what I wanted to hear. You know what Dad wants to hear, right? Just one thing. One simple thing. That his son is going to be alright. I don't know why I thought Colonel Nabat would be able to tell me that. I was panicked. Every new thing I read was just so unbelievable. I didn't want to believe it. I thought some soldier who had graduated at the top of her class would be able to tell me otherwise. Like a life preserver, I held on to that thought. It was only several days later that I finally got to see her. 3 days after the accident. I'm sorry to have kept you waiting for 3 days. Nabat bowed her head deeply. I'm sure you've been quite worried. Her expression was sorrowful. They were in a medical observation room, watching a monitor on the wall. The monitor showed Dodge playing with something that looked like a puzzle. They said that this is one of the things they were using in their investigation. Sazh wasn't allowed to visit him yet, but Nabat had prepared the monitor room for him, so that he could at least see that his son was alright. Whatever, I don't care. But Dodge, my son. Let me take him home, Sazh wanted to say, but didn't. He looked at Dodge on the monitor, happily clapping his hands. There was the symbol, right there on the back of his hand. I can't ask yet, he thought. We have to do something about that first, before we go home. You probably have already realized, but... Nabat looked as though she was trying to say something that was difficult. She breathed and said what she wanted to say. Your son has been chosen to be a lassie, by Falsi Kujata. For the past 3 days, Sazh had searched and studied about the lassie, as much as time would allow, but it only made him lose hope. Nabat was the last glimmer he had left. He was sure she would say, You've got it all wrong. There's no way your son could be a lassie, and he would laugh his fears away. But at her words he fell into despair. He didn't even realize he was yelling. How could you joke about this? Let's see another but some old story. I understand how you're feeling. Nabat closed her eyes sadly. Sazh is at a loss for words. Should he tell her, You understand nothing? Or could he tell her, Don't sympathize with me? No, it wouldn't change anything. No matter what he said, nothing would change. Instead, he shoved those feelings deep within his heart. I don't understand this. Any of it. Sazh clenched his fist in frustration. We were surprised also, she continued quietly. According to records, a lassie has not been chosen for hundreds of years, not since the War of Transgression. Then why? Why did this happen to Dodge? Why was it Dodge? There had been other children in the same place, tons of them, children the same age as Dodge. No, did it even have to be a child? No, did it even have to be a child? There were adults there. It wouldn't have mattered if they had chosen one of them instead. So why? Why did it choose Dodge? To be honest, we don't know. We can only think that he was judged as the best choice by the Falsi. A 6-year-old child? That's ridiculous. Mr. Katzroy. She opened her mouth as if to say something, but turned her eyes away without saying anything at all. She knows something, Sazh thought. She's still hiding something from me. What is PSICOM, the Sanctum, going to do with Dodge? Nabat had said in the airship that Dodge's safety was important, but Sazh knew the army wouldn't put out so much effort for one civilian child. If you'll keep what I'm about to tell you a secret. Bingo, Sazh thought. Nabat stared straight into his eyes. A great danger is approaching Cocoon. We have watched Pulse, and we know that an invasion is on the way. Huh? What could she mean by an invasion? From Pulse? This was too big. He couldn't understand what she meant. The Sanctum is holding back on making a public announcement of this. But what happened at the plant was no accident. It was the work of enemies from Pulse. That white mist, the ground trembling. The Sanctum had announced it as nothing but an accident, but it had been something planned, something from Pulse. The reason there was so little destruction was because of Dodge. He was chosen by the Falsi to be a lassie. Impossible! How could a 6-year-old child do anything? It was unbelievable. How could a 6-year-old child do anything against enemies from Pulse? It's the truth, Nabat said, cutting him off. But the enemies escaped. They are still at large. We don't know when or where there will be another attack. That is why we are asking that you cooperate. Cooperate? He still couldn't think of it as anything but a horrible joke. Cooperate? With what? Dodge has been chosen. He is the key to saving Cocoon. He may not have knowledge of his power, but the Sanctum will be providing backup for him. He will stand in the face of the invasion from Pulse. So please, Mr. Castaway, please help us. I don't know what to say to that. It's just too much. He wanted to hear a more concrete explanation. He didn't understand any of this. He didn't care about this invasion from Pulse. He just wanted to know when he'd be able to take Dodge home. Was there any chance that he'd be able to return to a normal life? Yes, I do understand, the bot nodded several times. She didn't seem like a soldier then, but a teacher talking to a small child. We aren't asking you to do anything special. We'd just like you to watch over him. I probably look like a sulky child right now, Sazh thought. We don't know what focus or powers Dodge has been given. We are trying to find out as soon as possible. That is why we are investigating now. Unfortunately, we cannot allow you to visit him yet, but I understand that you are worried. So please. Focus? Oh, of course. If the l'Cie does not complete their focus, they'll turn into a Seath. That's what she was saying. Right now, the most important thing was to discover what his focus was. He understood. In his head, he understood, but in his heart. I'll try to see if you'll be allowed to see him tomorrow, but we'll have to do as many tests as we can today. So please, just wait one more day. There was nothing else Sazh could say. Chapter 4. She wasn't lying when she said tomorrow. It was evening, but I was finally allowed to see Dodge. I left you back in the room because I was worried if you went, Dodge wouldn't be able to figure out what his focus was. Don't be mad. Dad really wants the two of you to meet. But the Colonel was right about kids. When something else takes their attention, they'll forget about anything else. At the time, I didn't really understand what they meant by focus. Not really. But I was panicked. Not just then, but the whole time. I was just so worried. What does a 6-year-old boy understand? Could he understand? That's all I could think about. When they called Sazh in, it was to a different room than he had been to yesterday. Instead of a monitor, there was a huge window. You could see the next room perfectly, but you couldn't see into this room from the other side. If you could, Dodge would have seen him and come running. They probably used this room to monitor their subjects. Do you want to see him first? Or would you like me to tell you what we found? What you found, please. He wanted to see Dodge very much, but he was worried about the results of the tests. If he was thinking about it when he saw Dodge, he'd make his son worry. He thought it would be best to hear about it first. In the next room there was an officer who was playing with Dodge. The man was probably in his early 30s. His cool silver hair and scar on his forehead looked as though it would scare children, but Dodge seemed to like him. The man probably liked children. His face looked grim, but you could tell he was kind by looking at him play with Dodge. Perhaps he just took his duties seriously. Dodge is a good boy. He isn't shy at all, and he listens to others. Looking through the window, Nabat smiled. Well, his mother died when he was very young. He's had to go to babysitters and through childcare, so he's gotten used to playing with other adults. That's why I changed from a long-distance route to a local one, so I could be more of a father. Before his wife had died 3 years ago, he had been all about his job. It had been his dream to become a pilot, and he had finally gotten signed on as a pilot for a long-distance route. Every day seemed perfect. When he changed to a local route pilot, all for his son, everyone was surprised. Even Sazh thought it was strange. He had worked so hard for it, to suddenly give it up like that. But he didn't feel he was wrong. He realized for the first time what it was like to spend time with your child. It was fun, and it warmed his heart. He didn't want Dodge to be lonely, now that he didn't have his mother. For the past 3 years he had worked and taken care of him as best he could. But in reality it was Dodge who had taken care of Sazh. His smiles and his laughter became things to live for. What did you find? Can you heal him of this l'Cie thing? I don't want to lose Dodge's smile, Sazh thought, but Nabat's eyes grew sad. With human technology, I'm sorry, but it's just not possible. No, Sazh said, his voice seeming faint and far away. If Dodge doesn't complete his focus, he'll become a Seath, a monster. If he completes it, he'll become a crystal. The old text had said, the l'Cie who has completed their focus will be turned to crystal and be granted eternity. But to humans such a thing is the same as death. Sazh looked to the other side of the window. The officer was giving Dodge a piggyback ride. Dodge was laughing and clapping his hands in delight. His smile was the same as ever, even though he was now a l'Cie. Just because of some scribble on his hand, he'd never again be able to lead a normal life. And if you could take the brand off, if there was some sort of skin grafting procedure, could you just remove it? Even in the worst case, if they had to cut off his hand entirely, it would still be better than becoming a monster or a crystal. Even if he couldn't use his hand anymore, he would still have a chance to live a happy life. We can't. We don't know what would happen to Dodge. There's so much we don't know about the LaCie. No, really, we don't know anything at all. But I regret that there is nothing we can do about this. But right now we have to think about finding Dodge's powers and focus. We have to think of cutting off the brand as a last resort. We can't rush this. That was easy to say, but they didn't know how much time there was left. They couldn't tell if the time limit for completing his focus was tomorrow or the day after. It could even be a year or two from now. There has been some progress, however. Progress? What are you talking about? Well, this is still all hypothetical, Nabat started explaining. It seems Dodge has the power to sense those from pulse. He probably will be able to tell us where the LaCie that attacked Uriday are, as well as the fal'Cie that controls them. The bit of hope he had fell back into despair. He can tell where those pulse people were. But what would that do? He didn't understand anything about that. He realized that this is the difference between himself and PSICOM. For those who were protecting Cocoon from pulse, such an ability would definitely be seen as progress. They were the same as the fal'Cie. They only wanted to use Dodge. He didn't know what exactly it was he expected from PSICOM, from the Sanctum. He couldn't depend on Nabat or anyone in PSICOM. The only one who would do anything for Dodge would be himself. Please, let me see Dodge. Let me see my son. Of course. Right this way, please. Nabat stood up, smiling. He didn't know if it was because his feelings had changed, but he felt there was something cold behind her smile. Dodge has been very excited since he heard that you'd be coming. What was she trying to make him do? He couldn't trust her. Daddy! Dodge burst to the door as it opened. Dodge! Dodge leapt at him, and Sazh picked him up and held him. He felt the same as always. When he held him in his arms, he realized what pain it would cause him if Dodge no longer existed. He didn't want to lose this feeling, this warmth. He would protect him however he could. Hey, Daddy! Quickly wiping his tears away from the corners of his eyes, he let Dodge down. What is it? He knelt down and looked into Dodge's face. I want to see fireworks. Big ones. Fireworks? Yeah, big ones. Lots in the sky. Like this, Dodge said, making a big circle in the air with his hands. Well, they still have all this testing to do, so maybe not now. No, fireworks! Big fireworks! He wanted to give Dodge anything he wanted, but he didn't think PSICOM would let them. Now that they knew he had the power to feel those from pulse, they would keep testing him until they knew his focus. Well, how about after the test? No, the fireworks will be gone. Dodge was more insistent than usual. Normally, even if he'd demand what he wanted at first, eventually he'd give in and do as he was told. It made Sazh wish even more that he could give him what he wanted. But right now there are tests. He looked at Nabat. Dodge was a good kid. If it was explained to him that the tests were important, then he'd understand. He might be sad, but he'd still obey. But Nabat said something completely unexpected. When you say they'll be gone, do you mean the fireworks festival? That's right. There was that fireworks festival in Bodhum a couple of days from now. He wondered if Dodge had noticed the posters that were in Bodhum when they passed through on their way to see the fal'Cie. Why do you want to go? Do you like fireworks? Dodge looked up, as if searching for the answer. He pressed his lips together. What's wrong, Dodge? It's there, he whispered, clinging to Sazh. What's there? He pressed his nose against Saz's shoulder and shook his head. Okay, Dodge, we'll all go see the fireworks together, Nabat said, while rubbing Dodge's back. Was she serious? Colonel, are you sure we should? I believe it would be worth checking out. She pushed up her glasses with the tip of her finger and nodded at the officer. We haven't heard Dodge say anything like this before. It's possible that if his power to sense those from pulse is working, there will be something at the fireworks festival in Bodhum. Of course, how you treat others and how you treat your family is going to be different. Sazh kept quiet. They may want him to complete his focus as soon as possible, but Sazh just wanted to take him to the fireworks festival. He didn't want them testing Dodge anymore. Chapter 5. We were going to see the fireworks. Dodge was so happy. He ran and jumped around the room, yelling and screaming, probably because he was so sick of all the tests they were doing on him. Even though that PSICOM officer, or those children's psychology specialists would play with him, he was still like a bird trapped in a cage. They had tested him over and over, but they still couldn't figure out his focus. The only thing they knew was that he could feel the existence of things from pulse. No, even that I thought wasn't the truth. I thought they were probably just telling me lies, because PSICOM wasn't getting the results they were hoping for. I didn't believe any of it until we were riding on the airship to Bodhum. Oh yeah, you were on the airship too. Remember how Dodge looked when he first saw you? It's been a long time since I've seen him smile like that. Sazh watched Dodge run up and down the passageways in the airship, his thoughts in turmoil. The baby chocobo was chasing after him. When the boy and the bird first met, they became friends right away. The cabin was in an uproar with the two of them bouncing about. Well, since there weren't any other passengers, Sazh let them do what they liked. When he thought about how Dodge had been shut up in that room for so long, he felt he had a right to be running around and having fun like this. He couldn't tell him. Nabat didn't seem to be troubled by it either. In fact, she had one of her underlings make a record of Dodge playing with the chocobo. Maybe they were using it as another test. "Daddy, I'm thirsty," Dodge said, running up to where Sazh was sitting. He was probably tired of all that running about. Of course, the baby chocobo was right behind him, and used Saz's head as a landing pad. Sazh opened up a can of juice for him, and Dodge drank it in one big gulp. With all the running and yelling, it was no wonder he was so thirsty. "Oh yeah, we've got to name this little guy, don't we?" When they first met, the little bird had started chasing him right away. There had been no time to start thinking of names. A cool name, like someone on TV. He was talking about the children's shows that Dodge couldn't go a day without watching. The main character was a baby chocobo, who was a hero of justice. Baby chocobos were so popular these days because of this show. But hey, what if it's a girl? What would you do then? They say that even experts can't tell what sex a chocobo is. Chocobos are quite mysterious creatures. They can understand human speech, and they have a strong homing instinct. That's about all anyone knew. Okay, then a cool, cute name. Well, that's a tall order. But you have enough time to think about it. He's not going to be running away anytime soon. How much Dodge actually had left was the problem. Sazh sank into depression. What sort of focus could a child of 6 have? One who could do nothing but jump and play and scream. "Daddy? Daddy, what's that?" Dodge said, pointing out the window. Let me see. Oh, that's the vestige in Bodhum. We'll be arriving there soon. Dodge pressed his forehead against the window and stared down at the ruins. Sazh thought he had already seen the vestige from the train heading to Uriday, but maybe the view from above gave a different impression than the view from below. "I want to go inside." "Inside the vestige? Too bad, you can't. There's no door. Even knows if there is an inside. It's just some strange thing from Pulse." Then Sazh remembered. A strange thing from Pulse? What was it that Nabat was saying? Didn't she say something about Dodge being able to sense things from Pulse? "It's inside." "Dodge, you..." He was too afraid to say more. "Dodge, is there something inside there?" Suddenly Nabat was standing beside them. She must have been listening. "I don't know, but it's there." "I see. You don't know what it is, but you know something is there." Looking out the window, Dodge nodded his head. "Thank you. You're such a good boy," she said, and patted him on the head. She looked at Sazh as if to say, "This is your child's power." But he still couldn't believe it. The vestige looked strange. Dodge was just interested in it because of that. He just wanted to try going inside. "We will get an investigation team on it and search the inside of those ruins. There's a chance that in there is a pulse." "Are you kidding me? There's no way that could be possible!" Sazh yelled without realizing it. Dodge jumped and looked at him. Sazh calmed himself down. "Don't worry. Daddy was just a little surprised. Sorry I yelled. I didn't mean to surprise you like that." He took hold of Dodge and held him on his lap. He didn't want him to look out the window anymore. "I didn't want him to believe that he could really feel things from Pulse. I think somewhere deep inside I still thought that they had it all wrong. There's no way Dodge could be able to see. So when I saw Dodge looking at those ruins like that, I just couldn't stand it. I wanted to keep believing that Dodge just wanted to see the fireworks festival. That had nothing to do with Pulse. I was sure he had just heard people talking about it on the train from Bodhum to Uriday. Even though I never told him about it, Dodge knew that the fireworks in Bodhum were said to grant wishes. Hey, do you remember what Dodge wished for? "I hope Daddy gets happy again," he said. I knew I couldn't continue to look so sad after that, when I was worrying even him. So I decided that I wouldn't ever look sad or worried in front of Dodge again. Well, I gave it my best shot, didn't I? Even after what the Colonel said. It was bright as noon. It was nearing the end of the fireworks festival, and already so many fireworks had been shot into the sky. Everyone had probably already finished with their wishes. They had all looked up into the sky and said their oohs and ahs. Dodge was holding Sazh's hand. He was jumping up and down, laughing and smiling. "So, Colonel Nabat, how did it go?" Both Sazh and Nabat were the only ones looking somewhere completely different from those around them. Nabat had been waiting on the airship for the report from the investigation team to come in. If she was here now, that meant... "I've received a communication from the investigation team," Nabat said, her voice low. Sazh held his breath and waited for her to continue. "There is a pulse fal'C inside the ruins." The sound faded from the world. The blast of the fireworks, the cheers of the people, everything was gone. The only thing left was Nabat's voice. "It's quite embarrassing. Those ruins have been here for hundreds of years, but the Sanctum was unable to do anything about them. We have a lot to thank Dodge for." Dodge wasn't even aware that Nabat was talking about him. His hands were raised to the sky, jumping, as if he thought he could touch the fireworks. I mean, he did suddenly say he wanted to go to Bodhum, that there was something there. But who would have thought? Who would have thought that there would be a pulse fal'C in Bodhum, inside a ruin with no entrance or exit? Now we know for sure. Dodge can sense things from pulse. "Never mind that. What is his focus? Is it just for him to sense them and find them?" Nabat's expression grew clouded. "We are not sure just yet if that is the case." "But why not? I mean, he found it for you, didn't he? Why wouldn't it be?" "I'm sorry. There's too much we do not know, but I feel that it wouldn't be something as simple as finding the pulse fal'C." She cut off her sentence. It seemed she didn't want to say more than that. If his focus was to find the pulse fal'C, then now that it had been found in the vestige, Dodge should have already turned it into a crystal, which meant that finding the fal'C was not his focus. Did he also have to find all of the l'C that were in hiding? Or maybe he had to not only find them, but defeat them as well. Either way, it was too much to expect of a 6-year-old boy. "Daddy! Hey, Daddy!" Dodge was pulling on his arm. "Oh, sorry. What's up?" "Let's go to Nautilus Park next." Sazh and Nabat looked at each other. Nautilus Park was a theme park run by the Sanctum. The park was at the center of Nautilus City. Did Dodge sense more things from Pulse? It was probably the Pulse l'C. "Is there something there?" He barely managed to keep his voice from shaking. If there were Pulse l'C in Nautilus Park, then this time Dodge might turn into a crystal. "Yeah, there are lots of chocobos, and the fluffy things." Sazh felt relieved. Dodge just wanted to see chocobos and sheep. Oh yeah, they had talked about Nautilus on the train to Uriday. He was probably just remembering that. "It seems it doesn't have anything to do with Pulse." Sazh nodded slightly. "Take me, take me!" He was about to tell him they'd go later, but Nabat stepped in. He thought she must be disappointed that her expectations weren't being met, but her expression was kind. "Please tell me if there was anywhere else you want to go, okay?" "Oh, of course. Even if this time it isn't right, there is always the next time." That's probably what she's thinking. Or maybe she was just thinking that a child who carries a heavy burden of a l'C deserves to have some fun, and wants to give that to him. No, not her. Definitely not her. "I'll take you wherever you want to go." "Nautilus Park." Okay, then next time we'll all go together. I promise." "Okay." Anyone looking on would probably think this was a sweet scene. Anyone who didn't know the truth. Sazh looked away and saw a familiar face. That silver-haired soldier. What was his name? Lieutenant Colonel Rosh, he thought. "Colonel Nabat." His voice was hard. Sazh got a bad feeling. Nabat stood. Thinking Rosh was there to play with him again, Dodge's face brightened. Sazh grabbed him and held him. What they were going to talk about was probably not something a child should hear. "The decision has been made." Sazh listened to them speak, his back turned as he took Dodge away from there. Chapter 6. The decision Lieutenant Colonel Rosh had been talking about was a lockdown on all of Bodhum and its residents. They came the day after the fireworks festival. PSICOM works fast. But what was really impressive was how quickly they set up the blockades around the Bodhum Pulse vestige. They only heard about it later. It seems that the investigation team that was sent into the vestige never came back. Not a single one of them. After the team had sent a wireless transmission that told them of the fal'C, they lost their position. Instead of sending in a rescue team, PSICOM blockaded off the vestige, even though they could still be alive in there, somewhere. Well, the soldiers might be able to accept it all, but civilians sure couldn't. You think they'd just accept it? Nah, of course not. I was the same. No explanations. Everyone was just being told they couldn't leave the city. Who would just sit down and take it? Especially on that day, when it wasn't only the residents of Bodhum. Tourists from all over Cocoon were there. On that day, after the fireworks festival, it was madness. After the festival was over, they stayed the night in the security force garrison. Originally, they were going to return to the medical center in Eden during the night, but when Dodge said, "Are we going already?" they changed plans. They thought that perhaps he was feeling something from Pulse and wanted to stay. The investigation staff that was testing Dodge had come with them to the festival, but they wouldn't be able to continue their tests at the garrison. Separating them into different rooms would have looked strange as well, so they were finally given permission to spend time together. The bot had already asked that they continue monitoring Dodge. She said that any small thing that he said could be an important clue. Sazh couldn't refuse. Well, even if he had refused, they would have still set up a hidden camera or put up voice recorders. They were going to be watched no matter what. Sazh knew that well enough. In any case, Dodge was happy. He jumped on the bed with the baby chocobo beside him and ran around the room until night fell. Sazh thought Dodge would oversleep the next day, but he woke up at the same time he always did, looking sleepy. He ate his breakfast quickly, and when he saw the baby chocobo playing around, all he wanted to do was play too, his weariness forgotten. Dodge probably wanted to come to Bodhum to get away from all those tests. Right now, he didn't seem to have any connection with Pulse, or anything from Pulse. He wasn't at all like he was when he had first said he wanted to come here to see the fireworks. "Daddy, I want to watch TV." "What? Oh right, it's that time." It was only a 15-minute children's program, but Dodge had always watched it before going to daycare. Dodge would watch it while Sazh was getting dressed, and once it was finished, Dodge would turn off the TV and they'd head out the door together. Sazh had thought that until Dodge grew too old to be watching children's shows, he would continue this everyday ritual. Once he finished work, he'd go to the daycare center to pick up Dodge, and on the way home they'd talk about what to have for dinner, stopping to pick up things at the store. What had been an everyday thing now seemed like a miracle. But that miracle was gone, its light grown cold. "Daddy, the TV is weird," Dodge said unhappily. Sazh looked up, remembering where he was. "All the channels are the same." "That's Bodhum Station." It showed soldiers at Bodhum Station, and the station blocked off. The voice of a female newscaster came on over the video. "Last night, a foul sea from Pulse was found in the ruins around Bodhum's coast. The Sanctum has made the decision to close off the city of Bodhum and its surrounding areas." The picture changed to a video of the airship fleet above the station. Sazh ran over to the window. He could see the military's high-speed ships take off, and soldiers running around on the grounds. The sky in the direction of the station was filled with military ships. The video narration continued. "The Sanctum has revealed that the accident that occurred at the Uriday Gorge energy plant was in fact destruction caused by Pulse L'Cie." He turned back at the word Pulse. There were people who were rushing the station, and the soldiers were pushing them back. They were probably tourists. "We don't even live here," they were probably saying. "We just happen to be here. Why is this happening to us?" Sazh could understand their confusion. He felt it himself 7 days ago. "With the recent chain of events, the anxiety of the people in this city is rising. Some voices are saying that measures stronger than a quarantine must be taken." He didn't want to hear any more. He didn't want to see people who were his own expression of despair. Sazh turned off the TV. "No TV today. You'll have to watch it tomorrow. Look, he wants to play with you." The baby chocobo flew out from his hair. Dodge laughed and they ran around the room together. Now he had probably forgotten all about that children's program he had wanted to watch. There was a knock at the door, as if someone was waiting just for that moment. They probably had been waiting. After all, this room was being monitored. When he opened the door, Nabat was on the other side. "Mr. Katsui, we will be leaving here as soon as possible. Please get ready." "Are you sure? What about sensing things from Pulse or whatever it was?" She glanced over Saz's shoulder into the room beyond. When she saw that Dodge was absorbed in playing with the baby chocobo, she said in a low voice, "The Sanctum has decided to force all the citizens of Bodhum to leave the city." Which meant that they had decided to force all those who had the possibility of being from Pulse to leave the city, to be sent to Pulse. She spoke of it as though it were the right thing to do after putting a city into quarantine. "After it's announced, we expect there to be quite an uproar." That was an understatement, given how the people already felt about being blocked from leaving the city. If they were forced to go down to Pulse, to hell, it would end with civilians attacking the soldiers. It would just be a matter of time. "Of course, we must hurry to find the Pulse L'Cie, but keeping Dodge safe is important above all. Once the airship is ready to set out, we'll leave." The bot turned and walked out of the room, leaving only her words behind her. It was only a short time later that they left the garrison. They didn't tell them whether or not they would be returning to the medical center. They were only told to get on the airship. Dodge left the room without resisting or making a fuss. Sazh thought that he'd play around with the baby chocobo like he did before, on their trip to Bodhum, but instead he kept quiet. He sat, staring at Bodhum through the window. "Daddy, something is flying," Dodge whispered. "The skies in Bodhum have been locked down by PSICOM's air fleet, so that's not surprising. I'm sure there's lots of... Huh? Looking out from the side, he saw the something that Dodge was pointing at. It looked like your average air bike, but its movements were strange. What are they doing? Then he knew why it was so strange. The air bike was being chased by the other military ships, even being attacked by them. The air bike was trying to avoid the attacks, weaving in and out, making their flight path look strange. The ship was headed for the vestige, going straight for it. "They're falling!" Dodge screamed. The air bike had been hit, with black smoke billowing out behind it. They were still getting closer to the top of the vestige. Then someone jumped from the air bike. A civilian? From there, it looked like a young girl. She held out her hand to the air bike and yelled something. Of course, that's why they were being chased. Some civilians had stolen the air bike. Then the girl was sucked into the vestige. The air bike she had been riding on disappeared from sight. What just happened? Dodge, did you see someone jump from that ship into the ruins? The bot was standing behind them. Dodge nodded. And did you see them disappear? They didn't disappear. They're inside. It seems that it wasn't just his eyes tricking him. The girl really did get sucked into the ruins. That would mean that there were people who were in the vestige, trapped by the Pulse Fal'Cie. Good job, Dodge, the bot said, and patted him on the head. What was she talking about? Sazh thought. Shouldn't they be trying to rescue that girl? You have to rescue her. No, we do not. Those ruins will be taken to Pulse, closed off as they are now. It's going the same place as the rest of the citizens of Bodhum, so there is no problem. Sazh couldn't believe what he was hearing. They were just going to send it to Pulse? Is that really what she said? Besides, it is highly probable that she was a Pulse Fal'Cie. Don't you think so? Your son's enemy was what she was really saying. She looked at Dodge. He had already lost interest in what was outside the window and was running around with the baby chocobo. Dodge had sensed something else from Pulse, but his focus was still not complete. Even though he had seen a girl who might be a Pulse Fal'Cie, he still hadn't turned into a crystal, which meant that Dodge's focus was to find Pulse Fal'Cie, or Fal'Cie, and defeat them. Dodge showed interest in the air bike that was carrying the girl, so it is probably best that we send the vestige to Pulse without tampering with them. Sazh felt something inside him snap. Oh, you think it's for the best? What the hell is wrong with you? If we send that to Pulse... If it was sent to Pulse, then no one on Cocoon would be able to reach it. Then Dodge would never be able to complete his focus. If we send it to Pulse? If we send it to Pulse, then the citizens of Cocoon will be freed from the menace of Pulse. You may be okay with that, but what about Dodge? You'll just let him turn into a Seath? That's what you've been doing all these stupid tests on him for? Nabat didn't even bat an eyelash. Of course, we are doing this for the people of Cocoon. Are you saying anything is more important than that? What? He had never been so angry. The words caught in his throat. He clenched his fists, but they shook uncontrollably. Do not misunderstand, Mr. Catchoy. It is my job to protect the citizens of Cocoon from the threat that Pulse represents. Her words were cold, like ice. A terrible smile hovered at her lips. It wouldn't be good to yell too much, would it? Do think of how your son is feeling right now. Sazh looked around for Dodge. This wasn't a conversation a child should be listening to. Fortunately, he was absorbed in climbing over the seats, and hadn't even noticed them. Relieved, he felt all the energy seep out of his lungs. He fell into the seat behind him, and held his head in his hands. He heard her retreating footsteps, but couldn't muster the energy to do anything about it. There's nothing I can do, he thought. He knew it from the start. To PSICOM and the Sanctum, Dodge was nothing but a tool to be used as they wished. So long as Cocoon was safe, one single child was nothing to them. Not just Nabat, but all of PSICOM. No, all of Cocoon felt the same way. Of course Sazh felt that so long as Dodge was safe, the rest of Cocoon could go to hell, which meant that he was the only one who could do anything for his son. He would just have to complete Dodge's focus for him, with his own hands. It wouldn't matter if it was completed or not. They still wouldn't be able to return to the life they knew. The only thing that was waiting for him was death, or something equal to it. Still, a crystal was far better than a monster. He would have to destroy the Pulse Fal'Cie. But could he do it? He was a normal man. Could a normal man destroy something as powerful as a Fal'Cie? No, that wasn't the problem. He remembered the girl screaming something, standing on the top of the vestige. It was impossible that she should have been there. She shouldn't have been able to avoid all of those soldiers and get to the ruins. But she did. Just as Nabat had said, they were probably Dodge's enemies, but they had given him hope. Even if it was something that should be impossible, he had every reason to try. Dodge. He'd only meant to say it in his heart, but the name escaped his lips. What is it, Daddy? Dodge was on the seats behind him. He jumped on his back and looked at Saz's face. No, it's nothing. His vision became blurry. He looked out the window. Dad's going to take a little nap, okay? Okay, Dodge said, running off. Sazh laid there with his eyes closed, listening to the chirping of the baby chocobo and Dodge's happy screams. When they returned to the medical center, they were put in separate rooms. Sazh had at least wanted the baby chocobo to go with Dodge, but was denied. No, I want to stay with Daddy. Dodge held onto the hem of Saz's coat and wouldn't let go. Maybe Dodge knew what he was planning, that he was going to destroy the fal'Cie in the ruins before they got a chance to send it to Pulse. I'm sorry, Dodge, but we have tests we need to do. You'll just have to wait a little longer. Tomorrow we'll even let you play with your father a little while. Would that be all right? Nabot smiled. Dodge looked lost. He held on tight to Sazh. Once you finish with the tests, I'll buy you whatever you want. What would you like? A picture book? A huge chocobo toy? Really? Yeah, really. Whatever you want, just ask. I want to go to Nautilus Park. I want to see all the chocobos. Again with Nautilus Park. He said that during the fireworks festival too. He must really want to go there and see all those chocobos. He had planned to have Dodge ask him for something so he could have an excuse to leave and head toward the ruins. But Dodge wasn't asking for things. He wanted a place he could go to spend time with his father. So he made a promise. What else could he do? Okay, after you finish with your tests, we'll go to Nautilus Park together. The baby chocobo chirped as if telling them not to forget him. Of course we'll bring the little one too. Okay, you promise, right, Daddy? I promise. A promise he would never be able to keep. If Sazh defeated the fal'Cie, Dodge would become a crystal before the testing was even over. If he couldn't defeat it, he would become a Seath. Just do a good job on your tests, okay? Dodge nodded as Sazh set him on the floor and let go of him. He looked so happy that he would get to go to Nautilus Park. He was smiling. That smile had always lifted Sazh, held him up. It was his treasure. I won't let you become a monster, he vowed. Even if you become a crystal, I want you to keep smiling to the end. He burned Dodge's face into his memory and tried to smile himself. He wondered if he was able to. He couldn't let Dodge or Jill know that right now he was saying goodbye. Alright then, Dodge, will you go back to your room now? I'll be there soon. Okay, Daddy, you promised, right? He said and ran through the door. Just as he had been there, suddenly he was gone. Sazh clenched his teeth. This is for the best. Thank you for cooperating, Mr. Catsroy. No, that's... It was as if she had already forgotten what had been said on the airship. She bowed to him slightly. She was good. He didn't know if he would be able to go against her, but he had to find a way to outwit her. He tried his best to calm himself before he spoke. There's just one thing I'd like to ask of you. He knew he was being watched, just as Dodge was. If he was going to get to Bodhum, first he would have to make an excuse to leave. I'd like to go to Palampolum and buy a picture book or a toy or something. You know, for Dodge. There was a huge shop in Palampolum that had nothing but books and toys for children. When he was a long-distance route pilot, he would often stop at the store and buy all sorts of presents for Dodge. At the time he didn't really know what Dodge would like, so he'd just buy the first thing he'd see. It would make his wife laugh. Well, you know, it must be hard for a child that young to go through all those tests. I'd like to buy him something to entertain him, make him stop thinking about it. You know, just that. Yes, I'm sure that would make Dodge very happy. If I left now and hurried, I could be back by late tomorrow afternoon. But if Dodge asks anything about me, will you tell him where I went? I don't want him to worry. Of course, I understand, she said, smiling. Then she said, Well then, why don't we take you in one of our military airships? If you're going to Palampolum, it would be far quicker than going by any civilian flights. Just as I figured, Sazh thought. They were going to keep watching him no matter what. He was glad he chose Palampolum. If it had been a small town, he wouldn't be able to shake them. But in a crowded city like Palampolum, it would be easy to disappear. That would be a big help, thanks. This had to work. It had to. He forced himself to smile. Chapter 7. Chapter 7. I actually had no problems getting away from my watchdogs. I'd always gone to that store to buy presents for Dodge. I knew every corner. That'll teach him to underestimate a civilian. Once I left Palampolum, I jumped from trains to rental airbacks, never stopping. I couldn't stop. The most difficult part should have been trying to get into Bodhum, but it was far easier than I thought it was going to be. PSICOM had orders to let nothing out, not even a rat, but they wouldn't suspect anyone trying to get in. I told them my wife and child were in the city, so I wanted to be with them. If they were going to be sent to Pulse, then they could at least be sent as a family. It was so easy, they didn't even bother checking me. I did pretty well, don't you think? Well, now it's time we part ways, me and you. After all, Pulse is said to be a hell. Before I get there, though, I'll have to defeat that fal'Cie. That won't be easy, so I'm sorry to say I just can't take you with me. I don't think any soldiers will stop me from letting you out of the city. Once you're outside of Bodhum, you can go wherever you want. We're only together for a short while, but you've helped me out a lot. You helped out Dodge too, I think. Gave him something to be cheerful about. So thanks. God, what the hell? What are you doing? Ow, 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 ow! Quit attacking me with your beak! What's wrong with you? Do you want to come with me? So you don't think I can handle it on my own? Alright, fine. We'll complete his focus for him, and we'll return to him together. Okay? Oh yeah, we never did find a name for you. Dodge was so into playing with you he couldn't even remember to do that. When we get back, it will be the first thing we do. What was it? A cool, cute name? Yeah, we'll give you one of those. I promise, just between us guys. Well, no one can tell what sex chocobos are, but whatever. All the trains at Bodhum Station were blocked off, except one. The one that was left went to the Hanging Edge, at the farthest end of Cocoon. It was a train that went to Pulse, the only train that went there. The rail was old and rusty. Everything had changed from what it was like on the news today. No one was going against the soldiers. They had all given up and were in despair. Now they were all heading towards their last train ride. He couldn't let them know that he was there for a different reason, that he wasn't heading towards Pulse. He was heading towards the Pulse fal'Cie. Sazh walked like the rest of them, looking down at his feet. Even so, he felt he had more hope than these others. He had a plan. He was going towards something, even if he never saw his beloved son again. When we get on there, we'll never get to come back. You still okay with that? He said in a quiet voice to the baby chocobo riding on his head. He felt a peck through his hair. Ow. Okay, I get you. We're in this together. Let's go then, he whispered, heading towards the entrance of the station, to the start of a new journey. This one won't have a return ticket.